I found it.
Congratulations.
I found the record button, everybody. Welcome to the Apostates Playground, the podcast where, despite the fact that we are fully aware storms have been causing scorpions and snakes to rise up and attack in biblical levels, we are still here to shit on Jesus. I am Phineas.
I wasn't aware about the storms.
Oh, yeah. In Egypt, there was storms that kicked up a whole bunch of scorpions and snakes, and they put a bunch of people in the hospital.
Oh my God, that's horrifying.
It is terrifying.
That's my nightmare.
The local health authority advised people to just avoid trees. Stay inside. If you have to go outside, just don't go near trees. Be afraid of trees.
Oh.
Okay, apparently only one of us was aware. If you want to nope out and go to church, I get it. This is the one time where I get it. Storms start kicking up weird, horrible shit in the Middle East. No, it's fine. Trump is leading in the GOP primary polling again. I get it. It's the end times.
Oh, I don't think there's anything that would make me step foot into a church again voluntarily. So it's cool.
That's the spirit. In that case, I am Phineas the Apostate, the voice that just learned about scorpions and snakes jumping out of trees after a storm at people is Cece.
Hello.
And in this, we're going to be going over the Case for Christmas workbook, also known as a weirdly roundabout way for me to just end up talking about how much William Lane Craig fucking sucks again. First, though, we have to examine the case that Strobel is setting up. And that is going to be really, really fucking fast.
I still can't get over that you said a workbook. It's an actual workbook.
It's a study guide. It's
too important enough for that.
We're talking about your soul. No, it's ridiculous. It's before the video, what Christmas present did you really want? Did you get it? How do you feel about the fact that people say that Jesus copied off pagan gods' notes? And and then a lot of it is just the main talking points from the video. So I went through the first few videos, taking pages and pages of notes, and then realized, oh, I am taking the exact same notes that he is writing down. So I'm getting out of this what he wants me to, but also I'm just doing the work for no reason. He already did the homework for me. What am I doing? Smarter, not harder. Yeah. So the things that Strobel hits on really hard is that there are accusations that have been made that the Jesus myth copied off of a bunch of other deities.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, right. He hits really hard on Mithras, who is he's a old demigod out of old mythology. And there's the whole thing of Mithras was born in winter and Mithras was born of a virgin and all that. The counter to that is that Mithras was it was born fully formed, having formed in a rock and wearing a hat. And so,
very specific. What of all the details to take notice of?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's how he's born out of a rock wearing a hat, and that's
cowboy
stupid.
Hat or a newsboy hat or a trilby or just paper hat.
He didn't say. I assume something floppy.
No, I guess if you're going to form out of a rock, you do need to do it in style.
Yeah, something floppy, or maybe leather or cotton blend, or maybe not a blend, maybe just 100% cotton hat. Depends on when. Apparently, he was born in winter, so it may have been a wool hat. Keep those heavenly ears warm. So. And about the winter thing, the whole Jesus was born in winter thing, Strobel just eats that. He just because there's a bullet there, and the bullet there is that just based on what it says in the Bible, because it says things the shepherds were out tending their flocks and not the shepherds were out freezing to death with their flocks. Jesus was likely not born in winter.
Yeah, I was thinking, wasn't he wasn't born on Christmas, right? It was, I don't remember. They say he's born one time and he's wouldn't actually be born that time because I don't know.
Yeah, it was he wouldn't have been born then. And a lot of the evidence for that is based around when people would have been out with their flocks. And there's a few other clues. he was probably, if taking the biblical account, he was probably born closer to, it's the other one.
Easter.
Thank you. Yes, Easter. Probably born closer to Easter because that's the spring festival. So Strobel just bites that bullet and says, ancient historians figured out that he was born on May 20th and he was not born in winter at all. And he even weirdly bites the bullet of, we celebrate it there because they wanted to Christianize the winter solstice and kind of wedge into pagan celebrations there. So he even goes so far as to stop just short of saying the reason that we celebrate Christmas in the winter is entirely political.
Yeah, might as well have said it. I mean, you've already implied it without implying.
But I think he doesn't want to politicize. I think he doesn't want to explicitly politicize Jesus like that.
Are you saying he doesn't want to take part in the war on Christmas?
Yeah, I was actually surprised by some of the stuff that I found when I was Googling Strobel politically. So weirdly, I focused on Trump, right? Because that was a very galvanizing point for the politicization of the evangelicals. That's when they started saying the quiet part out loud. That's when they just made it very clear that I'm a Christian has literally nothing to do with what's in the Bible at all and never has. So I found some things that were surprising. I didn't find Strobel all about the Trump. I didn't find Strobel going down that kind of evangelical dark side. What I found was bad puns, mainly. If Trump gets elected, there will be hell to pay, or America will have hell to pay. Spelled TOUPEE, and just bad hairpiece puns. Yeah. That being said, that's not in defense of Lee Strobel, because after that, he was doing speeches. He was doing talks Focus on the Family and other organizations that are why there was the political and social dynamics that put Trump in office. So it's not in defense of Strobel. It's just that he wasn't, from what I saw, he didn't do as much of the personally asking to fillet Trump that a lot of other. He also says that a lot of people think that the Da Vinci Code is real. And in the Da Vinci Code, it says that nothing in Christianity is original. And people took that from Dan Brown, who said that all the research he did was based on real stuff, which so does the Ancient Aliens guy. So I don't give a shit, Dan Brown. But people take that and apply it like it's an actual factual claim. And Dan Brown might mean that, but the Da Vinci Code isn't real. Even the parts he thinks are real tend not to be real. And I'm just saying that based on the parts I'm aware of. I haven't read it and I haven't watched it because I like to read, I don't like to read books that are a 5. I have limited time on the planet. So I either want to read a 10 or a 1. I want either extreme.
Which makes it memorable.
It does. And it feels like such a better use of time. I want either just incredible books or the Jesus Q connection, which I'm going to do a book report on because that is insanity.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. So there's this guy named Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, there was a pedophile who owned 4chan and started the whole Q thing.
Oh, like the QAnon.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I didn't know what you were referring to. I didn't know what Q was.
Yeah, it's QAnon.
Actually, it just occurred to me. I was like, when you said Q, the Jesus connection and Q, my thought was you were talking about the weird universal being from Star Trek. It was Q, right?
That was
no?
Q.
Yeah, and I was like, this is really weird. It's a weird connection. I mean, I guess I could kind of see it as an allegory, maybe, or something. I don't know, but it was weird.
Yeah. So, and the same goes for movies. So I haven't seen the Da Vinci Code. But what I have seen is where that idea came from before the Da Vinci Code came out, and that was in a movie that was available on the internet. So once upon a time, religious conspiracy theories stuck largely to things like Gnosticism and the Rosicrucians and the Illuminati are secret evil wizards. And like that was the conspiracy circle. It wasn't the Jesus Q connection and Alex Jones, fighting the literal Christian devil. It was just, hey guys, so Christianity is a lie. And this is how we know. And that film called Zeitgeist is literally the only place I have ever seen the Jesus copied off Mithras claim, which means either Lee Strobel saw Zeitgeist and thought it was part of the skeptic arsenal, or a whole lot of people 15, 16 years ago when I saw Zeitgeist and took it as historical fact instead of just what the church doesn't want you to know.
I mean, it's believable. It happens. It happens to a lot of stuff. Plenty of people believe in things that are just off the wall. So
Q. So that's the only place I've ever seen that claim. And Zeitgeist is what the church doesn't want you to know, in the same way that Gwyneth Paltrow tells you things that doctors don't want you to know. It's because it's horse shit. In the church's case, it's because it's a competing brand of horse shit, but it's complete trash. He also makes a point, and it's a really annoying point, that even if there was pagan births before Jesus that were supposedly had a virginal mom, it doesn't mean that Jesus copied off them.
No, there's plenty of there's so many different beliefs and religions and everything. It's of course there's going to be overlap in things. Things are going to sound the same, but it's just, you can't say somebody copied unless.
Right. And he says to do so is logically fallacious, which is true. There's a different number of different ways that you could put why that's fallacious, but it doesn't follow that just because one thing comes first, it means the second thing was caused by that thing, which is the Latin is post hoc ergo propter hoc, which translates to, because of that, therefore this, or something like that.
Plagiarism, in the academic world.
The problem is that Strobel says that after saying everybody that said they were born of a virgin after Jesus was copying off Jesus, which is the same thing. He also doesn't offer a rebuttal. And this is something that pisses me off about logic. People are more than happy to go, that's logically fallacious, but then they act like they're marking a tally. And the reason why, and there's two issues with that. The first is somebody's thought process being fallacious doesn't mean they're wrong. You can be right and use bad reasoning to get there. It's the Q people believe that Biden, and I've said this before, the Q people believe that Biden belongs to a child sex trafficking organization. They think it's the Jews, and that is logically fallacious in the premises. The globalist demon Zionist crazies the Q cultists believe in, and they're starting to branch off into different denominations. So it's hard, it's hard to give a grand unified Q anymore. But that part isn't true, but he's Catholic. And so he does belong to a giant international child sex trafficking organization. So the conclusion is correct. So because it's possible for somebody's position to be correct when they arrive there badly, just going, that's fallacious this way, and then acting like you win is actually called the fallacy, because you're not rebutting the argument. You're just going, boo, nerd. In order to properly say that, you'd have to explain why it's problematic for the argument. So the reason why Strobel's counterposition fails isn't for anything other than his only point is that somebody arrived at a conclusion badly. He doesn't substantiate that. He doesn't turn that into an argument in and of itself. So for that, you would want to do something like explain, hey, there is a such thing as the fallacy. And I can't respond to what Strobel said because he didn't say anything. He pointed out that this is logically fallacious, and I can either respond by pointing out, like I did rhetorically, not as an argument, that he does the exact same thing, which would be a bad argument. That would be tu quoque. basically like an argument from hypocrisy. But you'd have to point out that, like, I don't have anything to say to what you're saying, because all you've done is say that thing is fallacious. You used a conversation killer to try and escape what for you would be a losing conversation if you actually had to construct an argument. And it's just one of the things that pisses me off about people who are like, logic and reason, rational boy. And atheists do this a lot, where like they don't explain why something is fallacious. They don't explain how they're interpreting it to be fallacious. They don't explain like how the fact that it's fallacious changes things, or like try to like dig down to like see the rest of the thought processes there, because maybe it's just a interim conclusion or inference. So fuck Lee Strobel for that. That's it. That's all that was. Is fuck Lee Strobel for that. I want to respond to that and talk about why he's wrong, but I can't, because all he's saying is you arrived at a conclusion badly, therefore I'm right.
It's a great way to not have yourself open to discussion, so that you don't want to discuss with people or have anyone challenge it. You just leave it closed so that you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, I've taken a couple logic classes going towards my degree, a couple few. And one thing that I think should be made more clear to people in logic books, especially like anything that teaches logic, is that saying something is fallacious or naming a fallacy that you found on knowyourfallacy.com and then acting like you win is basically just going boo and then stomping out of the room. Like, you didn't win. You just killed the conversation. That's not winning. Like, you look weak. You look intellectually weak. Strobel also very much hits the drum that Jesus wasn't born in a cave really hard. Yeah, I have literally no the fuck idea why.
Maybe he just really hates caves. I don't know.
Yeah, like just it kind of came out of nowhere. In both the study guide and the video series, he just starts going, and Jesus wasn't born in a cave. He wasn't born in a cave. It's
like, where was he born?
I said he was born in a cave.
Yeah, I thought the takeaway was the manger thing.
Yeah, I've seen nativities. I've been in nativities.
The whole fucking song about it.
Yeah, right. Like, so I don't know where he got the cave thing. It was weird. It was just weird, and it was kind of out of nowhere. And if somebody knows, write me an email, because I would like to know what the cave thing is. Because right now, all I know is the cave thing was kind of fucking weird. And in the
he's screaming about a cave, and everybody else is like, nobody ever said a cave, bro. Like,
yeah, it's like when you sit down to have a conversation, and you're like having a conversation about one of those things you're not supposed to talk about, right? Like politics and religion, because the other option is like have people learn how to talk about that. And you're sitting there, and you're having this conversation. All of a sudden, David Icke walks over, sits down, and goes, I know, the lizard reptilian Jews that own the queen, right? And it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. There's 3 people on the planet that know what you're talking about. Nobody knows what you're talking about, dude. He basically does that, but it's caves. It's not even as interesting as lizard Jew aliens that control the queen. It's just a fucking cave he goes off on. And he beats the drum some more about the fact that like the reports of how Jesus was born were recorded shortly after Jesus died. And how is that advantageous for reliability? The people that were there were dead by the time that Jesus was born. According to Strobel's telling, Joseph was dead by the time Jesus was an adult. There's no way that the Magi from Persia were alive. They were already adults when Jesus was born. That's why they were advising kings and stuff. I'm sure that like the innkeeper probably wasn't alive anymore. Anybody that was alive, Mark was the first one written. It was written, around 40 CE. Jesus was born around 2 CE. Jesus was born around 2 CE. Mark was written, I said 30 CE, but the Gospels were generally written a decade or more after Jesus died. So you're talking 40 years from when he was born, at like very conservatively. If Mark had been written 7 years after Jesus died, which he wasn't, that's still 40 years with some of the people being dead. And I'm sure some of them being out of contact.
Yeah.
that they wrote down that this dude was born.
Can't exactly send an email. So
yeah. So like, cool. And so his case so far is Jesus was the OG virgin born. The Da Vinci Code is bullshit. Mithras popped out of a rock wearing a hat. Jesus wasn't
fabulous
born
hat,
in...
probably.
What's that?
A fabulous hat, probably. Don't forget that.
Fabulous hat. Like he popped out ready to party with Behemoth, not Behemoth in the Bible, the completely awesome furry that we made canon to the show.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
The good Behemoth, the real Behemoth, the Behemoth that I'm going to plant historical evidence of.
He'll be the next Da Vinci Code.
I might write a book about that time that Behemoth really fucked up Job, like just like a short story, a novella at the longest of just.
So there's a place for it on AO3.
Just Behemoth's crazy fabulous fuck vacation in
but I bet that on AO3 yours will not be the first one there.
I promise it's not, but it will be the first one with the artwork that I've been thinking about doing of gay furry Behemoth.
Wow.
So popped out of a rock wearing a fabulous hat. Jesus wasn't born in winter. And after Jesus died, people wrote stuff down quick. And that's where we are so far. That's the case we have so far to prove the case for Christmas. Which when I this is not the book it should have been. And he does he does that thing again where he's like, I need to go learn about history. I'm going to go talk to a professor of New Testament at a seminary. Like that's not historians exist. Not even
if you want history, you go to a historian. If you want
not even at schools.
Religious.
You can like go to a museum and talk to people. I'm going to bet I could probably get like an archaeologist or historian from a museum on this podcast. We have 6 listeners. Like Lee Strobel could get an actual historian, but instead he just goes to, and this guy Bible's the Bible. And so who gives a shit?
Yeah, how did he choose that guy? Like who says that's the best Bible man out of all the Bible men?
Well, I mean, the best Bible man is Bible Man.
Bible Man.
Bible Man. We're going to do a Bible Man watch party.
Is that real?
Yeah. And it's like I was
joking. I was meant like Bible Man, like he's a Bible man, like he knows the Bible and stuff. He studied the Bible. I didn't mean like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Oh, no. I want to do a reaction video and put it on YouTube of you watching the episode of Bible Man where Bible Man explains to a little girl that her parents got divorced because she didn't pray hard enough, or the one where the bitchy old Jewish woman is the bad guy. And like it's greed, but it's absolutely coded as a stereotypical old bitchy Jewish woman.
Yeah, I guess
this is
watching that and something else, I guess. Add that to the list.
This is what I was raised on. And it's why I'm in therapy.
I didn't know it was a real thing. It doesn't sound like it should be a real thing. That doesn't sound like it should be
a real thing.
No, like what?
God, I was raised so much more Christian than you.
And that's such a terrible name too. Like what if it's geared towards kids? Like what?
I mean, to be fair, I was raised that kind of Christian because I was raised Promise Keepers, Jerry Falwell Christian, and that part of Christianity was started so that you couldn't have rights. So, like, it makes sense that, you weren't raised like that.
No, I don't know what I was raised. It took me years before I realized there were different types. And yeah. So, so
that's because I don't know. Memory serves, you were raised in a cult.
No, what?
Wasn't a bunch of your family witnesses growing up?
No.
No?
No. No.
They're a cult.
I know, but no. She is now, and she had tried in the past, but never really pushed anything. And yeah.
That's how they get you.
No, it's just broken.
Pushy.
It's just broken Christianity. That's all. That's all we were raised on. Just going back and forth, different churches and stuff. It was just, yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of that too, but we only ever went to what looking back were very misogynistic, patriarchal, fascist churches.
I don't even remember if they were or not. I zoned out because I was like, I just remember a lot of having always often having one of those like pamphlets around, the ones that are like awake with the exclamation mark. Like so many of those all the time.
That's why you're sleepy. Just a holdover from when you were a kid. Awake. You don't tell me what to do. Did you ever come across the Kalam cosmological argument when you were younger?
No.
It's the term for it. So there's the Kalam cosmological argument, which William Lane Craig made big in the 90s. And Lee Strobel presents in the worst way. So the Kalam argument is nothing that is, or everything that exists had a cause. At some point, the universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe had a cause.
No, it doesn't sound familiar, but then honestly, as a kid, I didn't want to be there anyway. So I blocked out a lot of stuff. I just kind of, I don't want to say disassociated, but I definitely wasn't there. I was like daydreaming or something. I don't know.
Sure.
I zoned out a lot of stuff.
Therefore, God. And that's the way it's usually given on like social media or by people who don't have the brainworm I do, where you study philosophy. And there's a lot more justification and premises and things that go into the Kalam cosmological argument. And I think this is a case where, because experts in a field forget that other people aren't experts in the field, at some point, somebody oversimplified the Kalam argument, because it is so much worse than people think. And there is an episode coming up very soon on the hows and whys. And my position on it, which has been vetted by a philosopher. This is one of the ones where I'll be pulling out an old philosophy paper and expanding on that. But Strobel tries to expand on that. And the way he presents it is nothing that is had no cause. At some point in the past, the universe began to exist. And then he cites Alexander Vilenkin from Many Worlds in One, saying, with the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of cosmic beginning. Strobel doesn't understand that when scientists think of like, okay, we have to approach this problem, they mean like a really hard like math problem. They don't mean a problem of like, oh shit, we have to do a cover up. Like they're not saying a problem like the CIA did when Bush assassinated Kennedy and then they made him president. They just mean a problem of like, we have to solve for X on this. So it's a very different scale for us. For theists, it's like a huge problem, right? Because this is a grand conspiracy meant to send people to hell. So for them, it's a problem. And for scientists, it's like, okay, this is a problem of like, we should figure this out because it's our job to figure this out. That's literally why we're here. Therefore, there must be a cause to the universe. He goes on to expound that kind of an ontological argument kind of way, which is a Aquinas' argument of like, you have to avoid infinite regress. Therefore, I'm going to assert a whole bunch of qualities, say they belong to God, and that means God exists. The cause must be powerful because of the scale. The cause must be smart because of the precision. Must be material or spirit because it existed before everything else. Must be timeless or eternal because physical time didn't exist at that time. Must be personal because there had to be a choice to create us. Has to care because of the careful crafting of a habitat where we can flourish. The scientific principle of Occam's razor tells us there would be just one creator. And then he runs down that list again. Instead of, he leaves off material and he adds unique, which I think is like to sum up the Occam's razor point, but it's weird that like he goes through that and then he like leaves one off and he kind of changes the wording of one a little bit to make his point. That's suspect as hell. So like the end of the list is powerful, smart, spirit, timeless or eternal, personal, has to care, and special, which is a different. I don't. Well, he's saying that describes the biblical God.
Who decided that as the standard, somebody
about 250 years ago? I think.
Somebody just like pulled it out of their ass.
Kind of started before that. I think no, I would think it goes back probably about 900 years to the scholastics. And they came up last time. They were, for a while, there was a separation in thought of like the god of philosophers and the god of theologians. And that pops up sometimes where like the theologian god, when you look at the Bible, is like vengeful and angry and kind of hates you. And that's like the Ray Comfort kind of God. Yeah. The philosopher God, like cares and has metaphysical properties and, has been thought about for a little while because that's philosophers think about things, but they're both wrong. Like the universe is very big and we're very small, but it's not like it didn't just get that way. There's processes. There's solar nurseries where material is manufactured into stars. Stars manufacture elements. There's the forces of gravity that keep planets in line mostly. There's, the occasional black hole, neutron star, rogue planet explosion in space. But like, it's not a big thing that just happened. It's a big thing that grew out of natural processes that we figured out. It's saying that it must be powerful because of the scale is just kind of like saying that like that tree is really big, so it must have been created that way by some wizard. When like a druid didn't do that, it started out very small. And through natural processes, it grew to be very big. And we know what those are. We know how plants grow. We know about chlorophyll. We know about how trees take carbon, and part of the process of like pulling the carbon out of air is the fact that they make new bark. We know all this. Must be smart because of the precision. There's no fucking precision. Like, are you kidding me? They just found a giant, like Grand Canyon size ancient river on Mars, the rover and helicopter that are up there, because Mars used to be habitable. It looks like it used to have an atmosphere. It used to have all this stuff. And then it just wonked the fuck out. Like there's a range of hundreds of, it's one of those things where like, if the Earth's orbit changes by 0.2%, then the Earth isn't habitable, right? That's the argument from fine tuning. Yeah. But it ignores the point that the Earth just has a bigger wiggle than that, just in its orbit. We don't orbit in a circle. We orbit in a measurable elliptical. And part of that is the fact that like the Earth's distance to the sun changes. So then what? The idea that it must be spirit because it existed before everything else did. Well, that's going to need some big substantiation. That's a controversial premise. First off,
can't really measure that anyway.
Yeah. First off, you have to demonstrate spirit, right? Now, you can't do that. Like almost definitionally, you can't do that because you can only empirically demonstrate corporeal things, and spirit, if it were corporeal, would be material. So the best that's ever come up is you look at the Bible and it says, God breathes life in, God breathes life in, life is breath of life. But like, I don't buy the precision thing. We are so precise that we have a blind spot in our eye that we just can't see. We are so precise that we have a vestigial tail that tucks up under our pelvis. Like we are so precise that our optical nerve goes down, loops around our heart, and then goes back up to our brain.
We're so precise we can be just born with defects that'll kill us. Our bodies just don't work right.
Yeah.
Or mental issues, just precision. They started from somewhere and they just came from somewhere.
We're so precise that occasionally our spine grows outside of us.
Yeah.
Like part of precision is you don't have weird fuck ups, right? And the way that like just the human genome can fuck up is we have, I forget the words for it. I forget the words for it because I don't usually read about biology, but we can either just like drop a letter, add a letter, which scoots everything over, or everything can just kind of scoot over. Like
genetic mutation, like we have.
Yeah. And and then we have mutations because something just went a little weird in the amino acids that make up our DNA strands.
Yeah.
And like sometimes that works out really crazily. There is an S amino acid that some people from Eastern Africa have, where sickle cell anemia is really bad. And depending on what amino acid the S matches up with, it can alter the blood cells just enough that they don't get fucked up by sickle cell anemia. So it changes the shape of the blood cells just enough that it gives a defense against sickle cell anemia. And that's really cool. And that's probably the kind of precision he's talking about, except that it ignores all of the people who died of sickle cell anemia. And B, the fact that like the reason why an Aston Martin is more precise than a Kia is because it's a higher quality product that doesn't just like have as much crap go wrong. And if you're talking about cosmological precision, we're on a crash course with the Andromeda galaxy. Like somebody fucked up their calculations some goddamn place. Like it's our galaxy is pulling a Titanic into another galaxy, which means that God, if nothing else, is a boat captain on the same level as the guy who crashed the Titanic into an iceberg. So like precision, my fat ass. I think we're on Spirit.
Yeah.
So you have to substantiate that. Must be timeless or eternal because physical time didn't exist. Doesn't make sense.
You can't measure that.
Yeah, like time is entropy. You know, we measure time in seconds. A second is the amount of. So you know, atomic clocks. The reason why they're called atomic clocks is because they're linked. They do satellite things to talk to a computer, and that computer is measuring how long it takes for a atom of cesium-138 to rotate fully. That's 1 second.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So with nothing to do entropy, and in this case, cesium to measure, like what does it mean to exist through a process when there's no process? And you can either say, well, it doesn't mean anything, that's dumb, or you can try to figure that out to develop an actual rebuttal. And that's why philosophy matters. It's not the only reason, but I'm being defensive. Must be personal because there had to be a choice. That raises a really interesting question. The interesting question there is Strobel, through Craig's voice, claiming that God is pure agency? Because if God is pure agency, then God could do literally anything. And I'm gonna pull it in a little bit. And this is part of a conversation, an essay back and forth by Alvin Plantinga and J.L. Mackie that I'll be talking about on a later episode about omnipotence and the problem of evil. But I'm gonna give a little bit, and I'm gonna say God can do anything that can be done if God is pure agency. So I'm not going to say God can do anything, which is what that would actually mean. What was the other choice?
God just exists and shit just happens without God having control over it, which doesn't make sense either, because it defeats the whole argument, whatever argument they're trying to make.
Yeah, if things can't pop up by themselves, so there's nothing, there's just nothing.
Just chaos.
There's just
randomness.
There's just some dude who isn't a dude. Like that leaves like the concept of agency floating in timeless time without space, spacelessly floating through no time. What even is that? Like I'm gonna need these questions answered. And I don't think Strobel can do that. Quite frankly, I think in his prime, Strobel would not be able to answer that question of like, what is the other choice? Especially since their whole thing is like God wanted to have a relationship with people, so he made them.
Yeah. Just there are arguments. God, when I was a kid, what I learned was, God was like, let's create the universe. Let's create planets. And then let's create stuff on this planet in 7 days. It's like, that's their argument to me, is that they're just, God created all these things, but like, I don't know.
And you're not supposed to, because that's part of God's bigger plan. You don't know like he does. The problem is you can't say there had to be a choice and then take that choice away. There's some plan that apparently involves us that gives God desire. And those two things right there, what he wants and what his goals are, would limit his choice.
Oh, yeah. So
did there have to be a choice? And is being personal is having choice a quality of being personal?
Those feel like two unrelated things.
They feel very much like two unrelated things. I feel like, if we don't have free will, there are still things and people that are very personal to me, even if we don't have the capacity for choice. So on literally every single level, just the concept of a personal God with choice that still has wants and desires and goals that would restrict what you would be willing to do all kind of falls apart. The next one is he has to care because of the carefully crafting a habitat where we can flourish. Do we though? I mean, just real quick, right? Like if we do 30 seconds on the clock, cancer, earworms, Candiru, his followers, Republicans, capitalism, the church, like the Catholic one, slavery, especially justifications for slavery in his book. But like, no, generally like the fact that he doesn't show up to tell people who say things like, look how much the Bible comforted slaves to fuck themselves to death. Like,
the fact that many people, innocent people or children can like be tortured or die in situations and he just doesn't step in. Like
koalas are mean.
That's just wrong. That's not right at all.
Like it's, and like, that's the thing is part of the habitat is the environment. It's what people do to each other. But if we just think about like natural things that exist,
mosquitoes.
Yeah. Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes have no purpose at all. COVID. Yeah.
And mosquitoes spread malaria. Yeah. Zika virus. Like, the fact that like there's a whole bunch of plants that look very similar to edible plants, but they fucking kill you. The fact that we have bones in our head next to our brain that will rot and fucking kill you. The fact that our hearts just occasionally stop. The fact that like, never mind habitat. If we're a soul, then our body is part of our habitat. The only organ that not the only organ, but like the least reparative organ in our body is our heart. We have a liver that will grow itself back like we're Wolverine, but our heart can't fix itself in any way.
No, and it's really hard to sort it out if it has issues.
Yeah, like the fact that mean dogs exist. That shouldn't. There is no God in a world where mean dogs exist.
I don't think there's any mean dogs. I think they just get taught that way. They get raised that way.
Yeah, bad dog owners exist. I'm even willing to go so far as to say that we can't flourish in a world where Bell Hooks died, but Greg Locke still lives.
I can see it. Yeah.
Like, yeah. Bell Hooks died, but Greg Locke is going to go scream about a statue that he describes wrongly in Mexico, because he thinks it looks like the Beast of Revelation, which it doesn't. But Bell Hooks died. There's no flourishing in that world. There's just doing your best in that world.
Yeah, man.
And the scientific principle of Occam's razor doesn't make sense because science is a method for finding out information.
You probably, at least for my benefit, should probably explain what Occam's razor is, because I think I know it, but I don't quite have words for it.
Sure. So Occam's razor basically states that like lean towards the most simple explanation.
So the most simple explanation is the most likely the reason is the answer.
Yeah. It basically like it says that your answer is probably the most simple because things don't like taking extra steps.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Which isn't a scientific principle. Like not like we would recognize scientific principles today. It would be a logical principle. There's
nothing scientific about it.
Yeah. And again, like, and that's I don't want to crap on science. Science is important. Science is cool. I think the greatest bit of fun of people telling me that like philosophy isn't useful is the fact that like cosmology exists. I don't see cosmology as useful. Cool. You think you figured out the beginning of the galaxy. I don't have healthcare. Like one of those is more useful. You figured out the beginning of the galaxy and everybody learns about that. And that's neat. Or everybody learns ethics and why we should have universal healthcare. So it's like, one of those is definitely more useful to day-to-day life, but it's not as cool looking. So yes, it is generally associated with science, but everybody is going to do it. It's just a logical principle. I lean toward it being a propositionally logical principle, but that might just be the fact that I'm a philosophy student. but it's going to show up in math. It's going to show up in science. It's going to show up in history. It's going to show up in art. It's going to show up in, like the whatever in archaeology. Archaeology is a big one that it would show up in. You look at like anthropology, which is a humanity. It's a, quote science. And there's like biology and there's some physics involved, but it's basically, what would happen if you took a history degree, a sociology degree, and it had a baby with a biology degree. Like that comes up a lot, and you hear things like in most likely and probably a lot when you do like bioanthropology, when you're trying to like figure out the sex of skeletons and stuff. So you're just leaning towards the most simple explanation. So like I have an issue with the idea that it's a scientific principle when it's just a general principle of good thought. But Occam's razor wouldn't tell us anything. It's just kind of a guideline. But one creator, isn't complicated universe a lot less complicated than complicated universe plus powerful, hyper intelligence, ephemeral, timeless, personal, caring, magical being? Like I feel like for as complicated as the universe is, it gets a lot more complicated when you add that bundle. It doesn't make any fucking sense to it.
Yeah, it's something you can't, which is inherently something you can't know or understand or measure.
Yeah.
By its nature, you're not supposed to be able to understand it.
I mean, when you apply it to epistemic humility, what we end up with is like, I don't know why, where the universe came from. I know that, the part of the idea is, everything was super duper small, but like, because there are quantum effects of like gravity and stuff, the universe had to come into existence. That's just the universe as a result of the natural laws that exist in the building blocks of the building blocks of the building blocks of the universe. But that doesn't mean God. And that is so much more complicated than I don't know. And I don't know. And that's a lot simpler than when I was trying to force myself into a crucifixion shaped hole. But Strobel concludes that with asserting that because of all of that, Genesis 1:1 is scientifically accurate.
Yeah, okay.
Probably go through and talk about early cosmology and Genesis 1:1, because I plan on going back and revisiting past episodes as the show progresses, because you learn new things, right? And but the short answer is no, just in the most basic way. The fact that like the earth existed before there was water. It was a hot molten ball of stuff before there was water. Man didn't come out of the mud is another one. We weren't created out of mud and then breathed into. We were very fishy for a while. Yeah. Yeah.
That's where they diverge between the creationist and the evolution thing.
Sorry. Yeah, damn. they like the word evolutionist, but really what they mean is just a little bit scientifically literate. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a science expert. I'm not a science student. I've taken some science classes. I own some science books. I read some science publications. I like Physics Girl on YouTube. She's cool. Up and Atom is an awesome channel, etc. But but because of that, I am like in a very basic way, scientifically literate. I can understand science papers. So yeah, I think I'm pretty dumb. And like, I can read that and go, that doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Like, it's just that doesn't, Genesis 1:1 doesn't line up with the science. And Lee Strobel thinks that because he doesn't know anything. Like, he knows things. He's taken science classes. He took science classes in high school. I'm sure he had general education stuff that he had to take when he was in college, university. But he doesn't understand it. He doesn't try to understand. He just tries to explain. Anyway, so that argument is why William Lane Craig believes in the virgin birth.
In a cave. No, I'm sorry. It was no cave.
No.
It was not.
Lee Strobel is about to pop out of your wall.
It was no cave.
And no cave. You what for? No cave. There was no cave. Jesus is a Jesus. He is not a hibernating bear. No cave.
Hashtag no more caves.
Yeah. The only cave I can think of in the Bible is where Lot's daughters raped Lot. I can't actually think of any other caves offhand. So maybe Lee Strobel just...
Maybe he has a fear of caves.
Oh, you were going fear of caves. Yeah, I was going incest. No, so in the session 3 video at 12:50, Lee Strobel says that William Lane Craig did not believe in the virgin birth because women don't carry the material to be able to make a male child by themselves.
Only male child?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
we just make female children all the time. We just choose not to. And then what if we want a male child? We got to go find a dude. Like what?
Yeah, I had that was my first question too, was, hey, Lee, did you maybe ask old Billy to ask about women having the ability to reproduce asexually in general?
Not like the only thing that stood out as to him at all was the gender of the child. Like what?
Yeah. And I say women, I very much mean, people who can give birth.
People with uteruses.
Yeah, it's unfortunately the way I took the notes was using the similar language to the way that Strobel used. And so when I put the notes out of my notebook into the computer, I used that word. And when I read it, but humans don't have the capacity to make male children asexually. So William Lane Craig didn't believe in the virgin birth. That still sounds insane.
Yeah, there's what makes boys so different that they need that little extra in the cauldron.
Well, and the Y chromosome is carried by the sperm. That is true. That's how the Y chromosome is passed. And I have, it's not open to that page anymore, but I have, and I could show you, the human karyotype. When you look at the chromosome pairs, the Y chromosome is about half the length of an X chromosome. There is a physical difference looking at the two of just the size,
But that's still, it still comes down to believing that, I guess, the virgin birth could have happened.
Yeah.
It could have happened, but it could have been a girl child, but because it was supposed to be a male child, it didn't exist.
Yeah. And a Y chromosome is about half the size of an X chromosome. It's basically half the Y sex chromosome is about half a chromosome. So basically men are underdeveloped in every way. And so I also have some questions about why women can spontaneously produce 2 full-length chromosomes, but can't handle 1.5 chromosomes. In addition to the other, 23 pairs that you have to be paired with somebody else. Otherwise, if it's not paired with somebody else, incest happens and you get birth defects. And so how much asexually with humans, how much self-incest is there?
Try not to think about it.
What happens if 2 people with identical genetics have a baby? I need a lady clone of myself. We're gonna make self-incest babies.
But that wouldn't quite answer the question you're asking though, because if it was a lady version clone of yourself, she would have a bit of a different makeup as any genetic makeup anyway.
Yeah, but somebody has to have the sperm. It's as close as you can get without, I need 2 hermaphrodite clones of myself. I need 2. No, hermaphrodite's not a term we're using anymore. I need 2 clones of myself into their intersex. Functional bits, because not all the bit when you're intersex, the bits don't, they function like you're intersex.
For science. And I need to watch me fuck myself. Wow. This is an interesting turn that this
and put it on OnlyFans.
OnlyFans doesn't do, they're cracking down on sexual stuff.
Were they? I thought they backtracked on that because everybody went, okay, but without the porn, it's just Instagram you have to pay for.
Did they backtrack? Because I know people were having problems and they were cutting down a lot of people's livelihoods and stuff. I didn't hear about them backtracking.
It was at this point that Phineas went on a tirade about how the failure to address the societal factors underlying why people commit crimes, including disgusting permissiveness to protect organizations that by their nature encourage grooming, like the religious ones, as well as the focus on one type of crime hurting a certain group of people, while disregarding how other crimes hurt that same class of people, and using a holistic vision of why people do crime, and and aiming for restorative model is an injustice that perpetuates using victims for vengeance porn and then discarding them, and is antithetical to an ethical, humanistic, secular society. It brought the vibes down low, so it got cut.
Restorative justice is a humanism. All right. So William Lane Craig thinks that women, people with uteruses, people who birth, can do so asexually as long as it doesn't involve a Y chromosome. Or Lee Strobel says William Lane Craig thinks that. One of them needs to know where babies come from. So when a mommy and a daddy have throbbing genitals, they slap them together.
Sounds so painful. Ew, like slapping them together. Like
slap them together.
Like you don't know what you're doing, obviously. You're just slapping them together like that.
You just slap.
No. No.
Until eventually one of them ends up inside the other one. And if done right, the sticky icky will go inside. That's actually a drug. Will go inside.
I heard that.
The birthing crevice, and it will do a D-Day on an ovum. And the one that gets to the top of the hill first gets to be king and become a fetus. And in a Republican world, if that fetus doesn't go 40 weeks to be forcefully removed by some kind of priest machine, then the mommy gets executed by firing squad. But in a liberal world or a leftist world, if it's chosen to have a baby comes out. So the reason why the virgin birth doesn't make sense is because Hutts from Star Wars reproduce asexually, and some kinds of bugs reproduce asexually. People don't reproduce asexually.
Thankfully.
And to quote my dad, we know that people who say the virgin birth is wrong are stupid because the Shroud of Turin had only female DNA on it. And you understand, not even women contain all of the things to make female DNA. So it had to be a miracle.
What?
And because I was in like fourth grade at the time, I didn't know enough to say, or the other option is, those words in that order don't mean anything.
No, not really.
Like that's the level of science that this is. Not even girls have only girl spooge. And what does that mean?
No caves.
No caves. That's the important part.
No caves.
So yeah, what we're dealing with is because of the Kalam cosmological argument, Mary would have had to have created a Y chromosome out of nothing in the ovum to have a male child, but she can't do that. So God did it. At which point Lee Strobel asks, this helped Dr. Craig accept the virgin birth of Jesus. How? Which was the first good question that was asked, and it would be the last. He then quotes Craig from he doesn't quote Craig. He quotes himself quoting Craig in The Case for Faith.
Okay. Yeah, that's how it works.
I don't like, you can do that. You know, he's following the Chicago format. He's a journalist. I assume he uses Chicago for citations and formatting. And
he usually just uses other people.
That's a legit move, but like,
doesn't help with your
yeah, I have questions.
Showing that you're that substantiating your supporting your case or whatever.
Yeah, and he wasn't like appealing to things he said in The Case for Faith. And if you do that, generally that's a move you make when like it's a quote that's caught up in part of you quoting yourself from another thing, or like referring to yourself another thing, because you can plagiarize yourself. That's just an academic thing. If anybody who listening to this is a college student, remember, if you reference yourself, you have to cite yourself. That's still, it's they call it self-plagiarism. It should very clearly be called auto-plagiarism. I had a whole thing with an English teacher about this. It's fine. But
auto-plagiaristic asphyxiation.
Auto-plagiaristic asphyxiation. Is that what you said?
Yes.
That is amazing. God, that sounds so hot.
Because it comes from a very particular.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, he quoted himself quoting a guy I don't know where that quote comes from. I don't particularly care. The quote is, if I really do believe in a God who created the universe, then for him to create a Y chromosome would be child's play, which is a fun way of saying I was convinced by the cosmological argument. I got nothing for the rest of it. No idea. Can't say anything about it, but I did I made the Kalam popular again because those two things aren't connected. It's literally, like I said, the quote is, if I really do believe in a God who created the universe, then for him to create a Y chromosome would be child's play. That doesn't make sense. If my electric beater can mix cake batter, then for it to make a lasagna would be child's play. I mean, layering things is so much simpler than, mixing things to the right consistency. So why wouldn't it be able to do one if it could do the other? Probably because it's an electric beater. So like, we really kind of need more, like how those things are connected.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah. There's so much of William Lane Craig's like metaphysics and stuff that I want him, that I kind of want to take one of his classes. I kind of want to go to Truffle Shuffle University or wherever the fuck it is he teaches that I don't remember the name of, and take a class from him just so I can ask him questions.
Could you really get yourself to sit through it without like saying something, or just?
I don't know. Because my first thought when you said that was like, I've taken philosophy of religion classes, but the way that teacher teaches, the way that professor professes is, don't like that, is the way that professor instructs is he gives you an argument and a counter argument, and then you develop a position on that topic. So like with the problem of evil and the logic of omnipotence, we read Mackey's problem of evil. We read Plantinga's response to Mackey, which isn't really a response. And I'll talk about that when we get to that episode. We read who basically says that like the idea that God couldn't microwave a chimichanga too hot for him to eat is ridiculous because that question logically doesn't mean anything. So it's not even a real task. And he calls them pseudo tasks.
Nobody can do that. The same with Hot Pockets and pizza rolls. It's not possible.
No, I ask my toddler. I make pizza rolls too hot for him to eat all the time. It doesn't stop him. He just
always too hot or too cold. There's no perfect.
Oh, I was talking about the fact that like my kid just makes loud noises while he eats pizza rolls that are too hot, but he manages.
Yeah, you do like everybody else does. You blow out your mouth like you're a dragon breathing fire. That's
right. He breathes fire, and now the inside of his mouth is like leather, and his dentist is concerned, and he has no taste buds. It's just smooth tongued. And Harry Frankfurt, who wrote the book On Bullshit, who it has the position of like, what, sure, God can microwave a chimichanga too hot for him to eat, and then he can eat it, because once you allow one logically nonsense thing, what the fuck is another one? What is there a logical reason why you shouldn't be able to logic too much? Fuck it, logic your way out of it. We're allowing not logic now. I forgot what the point of that was.
I don't know.
I don't either.
He was quoting, Lee Strobel was quoting himself.
Oh, so like
two things didn't have to do with each other or something. The mixing cake batter.
And then you take those and you develop a position and you defend your position, because that's what, like, philosophy is not having opinions. It's like engaging with ideas and constructing arguments for or against. Personally, I think that Plantinga and Mackey are both wrong in their arguments, but it's fine. I think generally Mackey would probably agree with me, but so I don't know if I could sit through one of Craig's classes though, because there wouldn't be a lot of like, I don't know that there would be a lot of like, tell me why I'm wrong.
No, probably not.
Especially in a philosophy of religion class, you can't take a philosophy of religion class from the Kalam guy and then not have him talk about Kalam. Like, so to substantiate God making a Y chromosome and sticking it in Mary, because otherwise she would have to reproduce asexually, and that would make a girl baby. Girl Jesus.
That would have been a hard life.
Yeah. we're given a lengthy quote from The First Days of Jesus by Andreas Kostenberger and Alexander Stewart, which says, the only reason to doubt the possibility of the miracle itself would be a prior commitment to philosophical naturalism. That is the belief that the material world is all that exists and that there is no such thing as God or supernatural intervention. From this perspective, miracles just don't happen. This view assumes that science can explain everything, but such an approach demands more from science than it can produce. If one, however, acknowledges the existence of a God powerful enough to create all that exists, there remains no reason to doubt that such a God could intervene in history in the supernatural kind of way. This is indeed the God who is presupposed on every page of the Bible and who has been worshipped and served by human beings from the creation of the world. Could a God who spoke the universe into existence with its countless galaxies into existence be unable to cause a virgin to conceive?
So basically, if you believe in God, then God can do an immaculate conception, which yeah, obviously, if you believe, then it, I don't know.
So I would accuse them of like a false scientism, because they're saying that philosophical naturalism is the belief that the material world is all that exists and science can explain everything. The view for that is called scientism. I tend towards philosophical naturalism. I think that a material world is all that exists. I don't think science can explain everything. I think that there's like a science or philosophy argument that pops up every once in a while about like how science has replaced philosophy. That is just it's a really stupid fucking argument. Philosophers should know about science. Scientists should know about philosophy. Philosophers should know about the science behind the argument they're making. Scientists should know about the philosophy behind the science they're doing, because one empirically informs one and the other theoretically informs the other, right? If you look at it as like science is information finding and philosophy is information processing, and you think about it that way, and you apply that to like what scientists do, right? Then you start to see that scientists do both philosophy and science necessarily. What part of the scientific method is construct an argument for why your results matter? Hey, so that's a weird jump cut that I just did. That's because my internet went out because God both doesn't exist and hates this show. So what we were talking about is like where they got philosophical naturalism wrong. And part of it is the fact that, so I was explaining that the way I see it, it's not philosophy or science. There's actually like an academic triumvirate, right? You start with the hard sciences, your biology, your physics, and philosophy, which goes to history and art and rhetoric and English and math. And like those three are kind of from where everything else comes from. It's some mixture of those. And insofar as like physics is really just math in disguise, it's only kind of. You probably could, and we did a long time, do physics without the math that we have. It's just math is the way that's the most efficient to explain science sometimes. So the idea that philosophical naturalism is somehow science can explain everything, I think is super flawed, and it ignores the very real mixture of systems that it takes to be able to sometimes takes to be able to even comprehend the kind of questions that smart people ask. Science will never be able to give us a meaning for life. There are some people who find meaning in their scientific pursuits. There are some people who find meaning in their anthropological pursuits. There are some people who find meaning in their ethics studies pursuits or their math pursuits, or there's somebody who finds meaning in researching the historical use of human skin books. And she's a personal favorite academic of mine, because that is so edgelord, the edgelords wish they had that much edge. So I disagree with their assertion that philosophical naturalism is that science can explain everything. But it is that the material world is all that exists. That I don't have an issue with. There's just some things in the material world that, because of the way perception works and the way that knowledge works and the way that humans strive for need and understanding, that we need to have a little bit deeper conversations than science can give us. And that's where philosophy comes in. And we need a good way to be able to describe how that works. And that's where math comes in. So like that first paragraph is out, and the rest of it in response to what CC was saying a half an hour ago before I lost internet. Like, yeah, the second paragraph is if you take I don't know and instead put in the premise that God exists, all of a sudden everything's explained by God. And a lot of people would write that off as the God of the gaps fallacy. But like, if you take it seriously, then you start looking at like, okay, well, why should I take God? And you get a lot of things of like, well, it's a natural, God is a necessary condition. God is whatever. And in propositional logic, you end up with axioms, and axioms are just things that we all agree are true so that we don't get into the forever game of how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? How do you know? At a certain point, you have to land on an axiom. An axiom is an assumption so basic that you are not a reasonable person if you don't agree. We're on a Zoom call. We can use that as an axiom and go from there in reasoning about whatever it is, right? We say we're on a Zoom call. We say we're on a Zoom call. We initiated the Zoom call. Everybody else, we're the best evidence for whether or not we're on a Zoom call. If it's really necessary, I could prove it. I have the recordings that are from Zoom. So it's such a basic piece of information. We can all agree on it. And at a certain point, that's what you get to is God is just axiomatic to these people. So you have to accept the axiom of God. Whereas to atheists, God in arguments is not an axiom. God in arguments is a premise. And when philosophers and theologians and scientists try to tackle that premise to establish that it's axiomatic, they can't. They either end up making unconnected conclusions that apply equally to literally every single god, Frodo, Voldemort, and magic farts. And that's not a good conclusion, because if we accept that one of those things is real, if we just line up God, Voldemort, Frodo, Spider-Man, one of those is real. If the argument works equally for all four, it means that it's possible to land on a real thing while also being possible to land on a not real thing. An argument that can be both true and false in the conclusion is not a valid argument. It's a bad argument. So I don't see a reason to accept the axiom. And so, yeah, like that doesn't mean anything, because it means the exact same thing if you take God and substitute Sauron. If you acknowledge the existence of a Sauron powerful enough to create all that exists, there's no reason to doubt that such a Sauron could intervene in history in this supernatural kind of way.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. If you acknowledge that, Sauron totally can. There you go. So could a Sauron who spoke the universe with its countless galaxies into existence be unable to cause a virgin to conceive? That still depends. What are the categories? What are the sets? Right? I don't know. Is it just the creator, the galaxy creator Sauron? Galaxy creator Sauron probably can't make a baby. Baseball player throws a ball really hard. They throw it really fast, and baseball pitchers have to throw a ball pretty far. So they must make a good football quarterback, right?
I think that's how it works.
Yeah. And it seems like that's a little more analogous than the galaxy developing and a fetus developing. One of those is biological. The other one's not. At least baseball and football are both throwing a ball. So
also on totally different scales.
Yeah. So it seems like a more analogous example to the kind of thing they're trying to do with, where if you have the power to do this, you have the power to do that. If you have the power to baseball, it doesn't necessarily mean you have the power to football. And those are both like ball sports. One of these is creating stars and planets, and the other one is creating a baby. And babies are not stars.
Oh.
Like, except mine, because if you ask him, he'll tell you. Strike a pose.
They all do, though.
Or he will either tell you that he is 4 or that he is handsome, because he thinks pretty and handsome just mean male presenting or just mean masculine presenting or feminine presenting. If you're masculine presenting, you're handsome. If you're feminine presenting, you're pretty. And I think like he's seen some fairly androgynous people, and he kind of goes back and forth on it. And I really like that. I think it's a policy we should all adopt.
Yeah, maybe.
The conclusion of all this, as stated by Strobel, infuriates me, because it ends with him implying that this 4-part series ends with him implying that with such a wealth of power, God could easily create a miracle, even one like Christmas.
But
the The thing he said is a holiday invented so that Christians could Christianize a pagan celebration of the fact that like they'll be able to make food again pretty soon.
What is that? Doesn't okay. I just don't have words for it. He like started somewhere else in the beginning over on it, goes all the way around to other stuff, and then comes back to it, but comes back to it in a way that is not like reinforcing what he first started with, or not like he's not even repeating the same like argument or whatever. It's like he came back around differently.
Yeah, and it's the first, like the first video is like this is rebutting the idea that Christianity copied off of other religions, and he does a bad. So we start off with the case for Christmas, we get the case for Christ, we get the case for virgin births, and Christmas is a miracle. After he in video 1 talks about how Christmas isn't even Christian, it's just the Christians trying to do a holiday colonialism. At one point, he points out that like Christianity isn't even like other religions. And when Justin Martyr said it was to the Roman emperor, he was just pointing out the similarities so that the Romans would quit killing Christians, not because there's any similarities. Yeah, I left that part out because I didn't have a way to work it in. But like that's part of the first one of like, did Jesus copy other religions? No. And when this important guy said that it was similar, it doesn't mean it's similar. It just means that the Romans shouldn't kill them because they're kind of the same, really. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has
apparently
to,
not.
It's one of those things where like, I feel that if your whole position, your whole view can be summed up in a tweet, that's bad. You have a bad position. You can give a conclusion in a tweet. I'll be like, all right, that's a conclusion. Let's hear your premises. And if you want to put each premise in a tweet, that's fine too. It would be maybe a couple per tweet. But this is a book of a study guide of Twitter length apologetics that's meant to be done over weeks. You're supposed to get to the end and not really remember the first part, I think, because all of this can just be summed up in 280 characters or less. And
I guess that's what has the workbook. Bad
points. The points are bad points, but not all of the points live up to points. So yeah, on Lee Strobel, all of Lee Strobel's points a lot of them don't even add up to points. I think that's a good place to close this episode out. I have been Phineas the Apostate. That has been CC. This has been the Apostate's Playground. She is on Twitter at Shika Shaman. I am on Twitter at Existential Panda. The show is on Twitter at Apostasy Powered. We are on Patreon at patreon.com/apostates playground. And that is where you can give money. And a theme for this next year, because I'm not doing New Year's resolutions, I'm doing year themes. It's going to be the theme of getting the Patreon in order. Yay. Yep. And the email is poweredbyapostasy@gmail.com. If you want to send questions, comments, concerns, corrections, not incorrections, or pictures of your cat, we also accept those. I had a storefront, which would be our storefront, but I'm neglecting the storefront and probably going to shut down the storefront. No more storefront. So that's why I haven't been mentioning that. And I think that's like all the things. Do you have things? Let me see your things. Put your things on the table.
I have no things to put on the table.
You haven't. It's true. She's a head in a jar. I keep her that way.
Mm-hmm.
And happy holidays. And remember that if a bell ringer says Merry Christmas, Hail Santa is a fun thing to say.